Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having us today. Thank you for the lovely introduction. Yes, and we are with the Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association and located in Western Canada. I would like to acknowledge that we are presenting to you today from the unceded ancestral territory of the Okanagan Syilx Nation. And our observatory is located in Western Canada. So I will share our screen. Here we are. Awesome. Is that working?
Yes.
I presume it is. All right. Thank you so much. I always like to check. Yeah, so this is just a lovely picture of Okanagan Lake. We are located in the southern interior of British Columbia, one of the provinces in the southwestern edge of Canada. This region is named for two major geographic features, the Thompson River and Okanagan Lake. It has over 120 communities in our region, including 33 Indigenous communities in an area approximately the size of Ireland. We are home to the tallest peak in the Canadian Rockies, Mount Robson in the north, and to the semi-arid climate of the Okanagan Desert in the south. TODA is a not-for-profit organization that operates social enterprise activities. We provide destination development, marketing, industry, and experience development, plus research services to approximately 2,500 stakeholders. We look to improve industry practices, support their economic success and overall sustainability through tourism marketing, awareness raising, and training programs. A guiding principle for TODA is a drive towards sustainability in the tourism sector, of course, and part of that was the development of the Thompson Okanagan Regional Pledge in 2019. This pledge was created to articulate guidelines for realizing sustainable tourism in this region and is based on the Indigenous 7 generations principle that recognizes decisions that individual makes today have an impact for 7 generations to come. We encourage operators and visitors to consider these guidelines when here. And I would like to now invite Mike to continue our presentation.
Thank you very much, Eve. And hello, everybody. Yes, so I want to go on to the next step here, kind of moving into the economic benefit side, but first talking a little bit about COVID response and recovery. So as everybody knows, 2 years ago, the world was turned upside down, particularly the tourism industry. However, one thing that happened with our organization was our response to the recovery really was a joint effort with other regions in our province. So our province is larger than our region. There are 5 other regions just like ourselves. And what we're able to do at the beginning of the COVID pandemic was we created the BC Regional Tourism Secretariat. So all the regions came together under one umbrella, and that gave us the opportunity to kind of really utilize each other's resources to help our stakeholders throughout the pandemic. Through that, it really allowed us to partnership with different organizations that we weren't able to access before. So the BC Tourism Secretariat really allowed us to grow, create partnerships, and through that, we've actually been able to find more sources for data in order for us to recover from the pandemic. So if you want to move on to the next slide there, Eve, thank you. So that leads into the conversation of economic benefits and partnering for economic data and the development indicators. It's kind of what we're talking about here. Primary economic indicators that we're focusing on as a region as of right now are the ones that are listed right here. So overall contribution of tourism to the regional economy, domestic and international overnight stays. This is data that we're able to get on a consistent basis. Average length of stay, domestic versus international overnight stays. The hotel room revenues per community. You know, our region has many communities, and we break it down per community. Average daily room rate per community, and proportion of tourism businesses that are locally owned. These are our primary indicators that we're working on. We do have other indicators that we look at, but these ones are the ones that have the most consistent data. And on the side there, you can see kind of a little bit of a chart that just indicates kind of some of the data that we get. And this one here shows different provinces across Canada and the amount of visitors that we get from those provinces. Move on to the next slide, please. So yeah, the data sources and indicators. So how do we get this data? How do we actually work on these indicators? Primarily what we do is we work closely with our provincial and municipal entities to monitor these economic benefits. So we get data from our provincial overall tourism body, which is Destination British Columbia, They provide us with a snapshot of these primary indicators about every 2 to 3 years. So that's not necessarily the most efficient or consistent form of data. However, at the same time, we also work with municipalities that have more consistent data outputs for us, and that's on an annual basis. But due to the fact that the data was somewhat sparse and it only came out 2 to 3 years, what TOTA was able to do is we actually created a for-profit entity, Symphony Tourism Services, so Thompson Okanagan Tourism Association, and then we actually have the affiliate Symphony Tourism Services. And that focuses primarily on research around economic data, tourism behavior, and industry sustainability. So with that, we were able to partner with Environic Analytics, and that's an organization across Canada that really digs down into statistics. So this is our primary source of data as far as visitation is concerned, overnight expenditures, and all those different economic indicators that we look at. Furthermore, so TOTA also has access to its own primary data sources. So as I mentioned, our main source is through Symphony Tourism Services, and then we go to Environic Analytics. However, we also have our own programs within the association. One great example of that is the Thompson Okanagan region is a biosphere certified destination, and we've created the commitment program. This program basically brings in stakeholders across the region to commit to sustainability. And through that, we do value added programs that gives us access to baseline data. One really good example of this baseline data is we have the eco-efficiency program. So with these companies that we have on board, we have close to over 100 companies right now. So it gives us a decent statistical baseline. We conduct energy, waste, and water audits for each one of these organizations. So not only are we providing them with information that's beneficial for them as far as return on investment, reducing their own costs and outputs, it actually gives us data to look at these subsets from 100 companies. And every single year, we're going to be able to get that data and really measure how that's impacting our progress. So with these sources, TOTA is able to extrapolate relevant data and interpret that data for our stakeholders. So as I mentioned, provincial municipal partners, the Symphony Tourism Services, which is a for-profit side of our organization, and then also our primary data through our value-added programs. All that information we obviously put into our INSTO document, but also the idea is that we want to be able to take that information and then provide a platform for our stakeholders to really understand how it benefits them. And that kind of falls into what we're creating right now, which is our data impact portal. It's very similar to what Portugal and Buenos Aires have done with their own data hubs. It's our own take on a data hub, and I'll get into that a little bit in a couple slides. Oh, it's actually right now, never mind. So our tourism impact portal is something that we started to create about a year ago. And really the idea was twofold. For one, we want to be able to connect what we're doing with INSTO to a hub of our own that really allows us to bring in data, be efficient, be consistent, and have a place that we can store all that data. Secondly, we want to be able to actually have a interface for our stakeholders to be able to see what's going on with all these different indicators that we're talking about and be able to really understand how it benefits them. So this is kind of a snapshot of what it's going to look like. It's launching this spring. We're getting very close to launching phase 1. And what we did was we chose data sources and indicators that were consistent to us. So what do we actually have consistently as opposed to sporadically? And we're going to be reporting on that in phase 1, and then moving into phase 2, really looking at what are the gaps and how do we fill those gaps for our stakeholders. So more information to come on the portal. Analysis, findings, and conclusions. One of the big challenges and one of the big findings that we found since we started with INSTO was we can only really monitor data that we have sufficient quality. When we started this process, we looked at all the different areas of focus. We looked at all the different indicators, and excited to get going, excited to start measuring everything. However, what we recognize is we can't really report on data that's inconsistent. So we really narrowed it down to the areas that we have consistent annual data for, which really illustrates to us where the support is needed and where the gaps are. So that allows us to really look at how are we going to solve these challenges of finding consistent data for these other areas. Another little area is community capacity to undertake data collection. We have many different communities across the region. Some of them are larger cities, some of them are very small rural communities, and they don't always have the capacity to provide the data that we're looking for. So trying to fill those gaps and provide human resource support. Partnerships are obviously very key to what we've done. Without our partnerships, and I think that the SDG 17 partnerships for the goal is such a relevant one, because from the beginning of our journey, it's always been about partnerships, whether it's government partnerships, other not-for-profits, or even private businesses is what we've been looking at. Eve, do you want to jump on the next one then?
Sure. So one of the questions was, what are we going to do with the report? So the report, the INSTO report, is guiding our alignment with partners and initiatives focused on sustainable development goals in our community. We also had available to us the local voluntary review summary of SDG initiatives in our community, which was the first in Canada, done by a nonprofit here in Kelowna, BC. And we also have access to something called the National Climate League Standings, which is a municipality roundup of statistics around the Sustainable Development Goals. So we have these documents available to us to help chase those indicators.
Yeah, excellent. And yeah, so this kind of is the end of our presentation, I suppose. It was a very broad overview. We don't have too much time. We didn't really get into every single indicator that we're looking at, but really the main thing to take away from us is the benefits that we've got with that, not the for-profit side of things, with our Symphony Tourism Services, and just the value of the partnerships that we've created, and looking at how do we fill those gaps of data moving forward. So thank you very much. Yeah, and Eve, I think you have something to say about the QR code here.
Right. So thank you very much for having us today. We do have an internal sustainable development goal team, and one of our objectives was to look at digital business cards and alternatives to single-use paper business cards. And so in the middle is a QR code from a company that we are using, and that if you scan that QR code, it will lead directly to my contact information if you'd like to ask any questions. So thank you so much.